The morning sky over 442C burned red. Commander stood on the Crystal Tower's highest platform and watched the enemy ships grow larger. They looked like giant black bugs against the crimson clouds. His people called them the Hive Collective, and they had been killing worlds for 3 long years. Skin shimmered blue with worry. All changed color with their feelings, and lately, everyone in the city showed the dark blues and grays of fear. His long fingers touched the communication device at his neck. For months, he had been sending messages into space, begging for help. No one had answered. The city behind him was beautiful even now. Crystal spires reached toward the sky like frozen music. Gardens floated between the buildings, held up by the same force that made their ships fly. Children played in the parks while their parents worked to grow food that fed 3-star systems that had never hurt anyone. They made things grow. They healed the sick. They built homes and schools and places of art. Now the Hive wanted to eat their world. "Commander," his aide whispered behind him, "the outer defenses have fallen, our ships." The young soldier's voice broke. "There are no more ships." Closed his eyes. The Hive had come to their system like a plague of metal and flesh. First, they took the mining worlds, then the research stations, then the farming colonies. Each time they had fought with their small defense fleet. Each time they lost. The Hive ships were alive. They grew instead of being built. They healed their wounds and learned from every battle. Worst of all, they never stopped. The creatures inside them all shared one mind, one terrible hunger. They wanted to turn everything into more of themselves. "How long do we have?" asked. "The enemy will reach the city in 6 hours, the aide said. His name was, and he was barely past childhood. All their experienced soldiers were dead. The bioships are preparing their world crackers." Knew about the world crackers. He had seen what they did to other planets. They broke the ground open like an egg. Then the Hive planted their young in the planet's core. In a year, the whole world would be one giant hive nest. He walked back to the command center inside the tower. The room was filled with screens showing the battle above. Their orbital platforms died one by one, bright flowers of flame in the dark of space. The planet's surface defenses shot uselessly at the bioships. Their weapons were made to stop asteroids and clean up space debris. They did nothing to the Hive. "Keep sending the distress signals," ordered. "Sir, no one has answered in 8 months. The nearest civilized world is 40 light years away. Even if someone heard us, they couldn't get here in time." Skin darkened to the deep purple of grief. He knew his aide was right, but what else could they do? They had tried everything. They had offered the Hive their technology, their food, their art. The Hive had not even bothered to respond. The creatures only understood hunger. The floor shook as something hit the city's outer shield. Through the windows, could see the first wave of Hive drones falling from the sky like rain. Each one was the size of a small building, with too many legs and eyes that glowed green. They carried their own weapons grown into their bodies. "All units fall back to the inner districts," said into his communicator. "Protect the shelters, fight for every street." He knew it was hopeless. His people had maybe 10,000 soldiers left. The Hive was dropping millions of drones, but did not give up. Even if they all died today, they would make the Hive work for their victory. The old stories said there was once a warrior race called humans. They lived somewhere far away, past the edge of known space. The stories said they were small but fierce, and they never let their friends fight alone. But the stories were just children's tales, weren't they? Made up to help young ones sleep when the night was dark. Touched the quantum communicator again. The device had been sending the same message over and over. "This is 442C. We are under attack by the Hive Collective. They will destroy our world unless someone helps us. Please, anyone who hears this, we have children here. We have families. We never hurt anyone. Please help us." The message had traveled to 1,000 worlds. Space was big and empty. Most planets were too far away to help, even if they wanted to. Others were probably afraid of the hive. Some might not care about strangers dying in the dark. Another explosion shook the tower. The drones had reached the middle city. On the screens, watched his soldiers fight bravely with their crystal weapons. The beams of light cut through some drones, but more kept coming. Always more. "Sir," said quietly, "maybe we should evacuate the command post." "No," said, "I will not run. If this is our last day, I want to see it all. I want to remember our people's courage." The hive bioships were moving into position above the city. The world crackers were powering up. Could feel the energy building in the air. His skin itched and the crystal walls hummed with strange harmonics. Soon, the city would be gone. Then the planet. Then his entire species would just be a memory. He looked at the communication device one more time, still sending, still hopping, still calling into the vast emptiness between the stars. "Please," he whispered, even though he knew no one was listening. "Please, someone help us." Above the city, the hive ships began their final attack. Captain Sarah stood in the bridge of the TNS Retribution and studied the star map. The system glowed red on the display, marking it as a war zone. Her ship and 20 others had been traveling for 6 weeks to get here. They had jumped through hyperspace again and again, moving as fast as their engines could push them. "Ma'am, we're picking up the distress signal," Lieutenant said from the communication station. It's been going for months." Sarah listened to the message. A voice speaking in an alien language, but her computer translated the words. The same plea for help over and over. "We have children here. We have families. Please help us." "How many hive ships?" Sarah asked. 17 bioships in the system, her sensor officer reported. 4 of them are planet crackers. The others are troop carriers and fighters. They've already consumed 4 worlds. Sarah felt the familiar cold anger settle in her chest. The Hive Collective had been a problem for 20 years. They showed up, ate everything, then moved on. Most of the galaxy was too scared or too weak to stop them, but humans were different. "Orders from command?" she asked. "Fight our way," Commander Torres said. He was her second in command, a big man from Mexico who had been fighting aliens since before Sarah was born. "Admiral Park says we save who we can and hurt the Hive as much as possible." Sarah nodded. The human fleet was strong, but 17 bioships was a lot. Each one was huge, the size of a small city. They were alive, so they could heal from damage. They could also learn from every battle. Fighting them was like fighting a disease that got smarter every time you tried to cure it. But humans had learned too. "Signal the fleet," Sarah said. "All ships maintain radio silence, deploy stealth fields and move to attack positions." The 21 human ships spread out through the asteroid belt that surrounded the system. Each ship carried soldiers from different nations on Earth. Sarah's own Marines were from the United States, but she also had British commandos, Japanese special forces, German engineers, Canadian medics, and soldiers from 8 other countries. On Earth, those nations sometimes disagreed about things. Out here, they were all human. That was what mattered. "Ma'am, I'm reading the planet's surface," the sensor officer said. "The aliens, they're getting slaughtered down there." Sarah looked at the tactical display. The Hive had landed millions of creatures on the planet. The defenders were putting up a good fight, but they were too few and their weapons too weak. In a few more hours, it would all be over. "Time to target." 2 hours to optimal firing position, Torres said. "Too long," Sarah decided. "Signal all ships. We attack in 30 minutes." "Ma'am, that's not optimal range. We'll take more damage." "Those people down there don't have 2 hours," Sarah said. "We go now or we go too late." She opened a channel to the entire fleet. "All ships, this is retribution. In 30 minutes we are going to hit the Hive with everything we have. I know you all read the mission briefing. This isn't about winning pretty. This is about saving lives." The responses came back quickly from the other ships. Captain from the Japanese ship, Colonel from the Russian heavy cruiser Moscow, Captain Williams from the British destroyer, all of them ready to fight. Remember, Sarah continued, the Hive thinks like one big brain. They expect their enemies to be the same way, but we're not. Every ship, every unit, every soldier thinks for themselves. Use that, be unpredictable, make them guess. She closed the channel and turned to her weapons officer. Load all tubes, prepare the drop pods. Yes, ma'am. Marines are already suited up and ready to go. Sarah had been fighting aliens for 15 years. She had seen what the Hive did to worlds. They didn't just kill people. They changed them, made them into more Hive creatures, turned beautiful places into ugly nest cities that spread like cancer across entire planets. The humans had learned to fight them by being what the Hive could never be: chaotic, creative, and completely insane when protecting others. Ma'am, picking up movement from the bioships, the sensor officer said. They're preparing to crack the planet. How long? Maybe an hour before they can fire the world crackers. Sarah's hands clenched on her command chair. An hour. She had to save an entire world in an hour. But that's what humans did. They did the impossible because someone needed help. All ships advance to attack positions. Fighters launch when we clear the asteroid field. The Retribution and her sister ships moved forward like hunting wolves. Their stealth fields bent light around them, making them nearly invisible. Their engines ran silent. Even their crews spoke in whispers. Sarah watched the tactical display as they got closer to the enemy. The bioships hung over the planet like giant poisonous flowers. Hive drones swarmed between them in clouds so thick they looked like fog. On the surface, cities burned. 30 seconds to weapons range, Tors reported. Signal the fleet. On my mark, drop stealth and open fire. All fighters prepare to launch. Sarah thought about the message they had been hearing for months. We never hurt anyone. Please help us. She thought about her own daughter back on Earth, safe in school while her mother fought monsters in the dark. Mark, she said quietly. 21 human ships appeared out of nothing, their stealth fields dropping like veils. Their weapons lit up space with beams of energy and streams of metal. Fighter craft poured out of their hangar bays like angry wasps. The Hive had been focused on the planet below. They had not expected an attack from behind. 3 bioships died in the first 10 seconds, cut apart by focused fire from the human fleet. Sarah smiled coldly as the Hive ships began to turn toward them. Let's see how you like fighting humans, she said. The battle for the system had begun. Watched his world die from the command tower. The Hive drones had broken through the outer defenses. His soldiers fought street by street, but there were too many enemies. On his screens, he could see the bioships moving into their final positions above the city. The world crackers were almost ready to fire. All units fall back to the central shelters, he ordered through his communicator. His voice stayed calm, even though his skin had turned the deep black of despair. Protect the civilians as long as you can. His young aide stood beside him with tears running down his face. Sir, the quantum transmitter is still sending. Should I shut it down? No, said. Let it keep calling. If nothing else, maybe someone will find it later and know we existed. Through the tower's windows, he could see the Hive drones moving through his beautiful city like a plague. They destroyed everything they touched. Art became food. Gardens became nesting grounds. Children tried not to think about what happened to the children. The floor shook again. One of the bioships was firing its main weapons at the city's shield generator. Soon, even that last protection would be gone. Sir, the communications officer suddenly shouted, I'm picking up new signals, ships coming out of hyperspace. Hive reinforcements? Asked. His heart sank, as if 17 bioships weren't enough. No, sir, these are. I don't know what they are. They're not Hive. They're attacking the bioships. Spun around and stared at the tactical display. New contacts were appearing all around the Hive fleet, small compared to the bioships but moving fast and hitting hard. As he watched, one of the bioships simply exploded, cut in half by beams of pure energy. "Get me a visual," he ordered. The main screen flickered and showed space above the planet. The bioships were turning, confused by the sudden attack from behind, and diving through them like birds of prey came ships unlike anything had ever seen. They were beautiful in their own way. Clean lines and sharp edges, painted with bright colors and strange symbols. As he watched, one of the attacking ships rolled between two Hive bioships, firing in all directions. Its weapons were like lightning, cutting through the living hulls of its enemies. "Where did they come from?" whispered. Before could answer, the sky above the city caught fire. Fighter craft came screaming down through the atmosphere. They were tiny compared to the Hive drones, but they moved like nothing he had ever seen. They twisted and spun through the air, their weapons cutting bright lines through the swarms of enemies. One fighter dove straight down through the center of a drone formation. Its guns fired so fast they looked like solid beams of light. Drones exploded all around it, but it kept flying, rolling and turning to avoid their return fire. My God, breathed. He had never seen anyone fight like this. More fighters kept coming. They bore strange marking stars and stripes, red and white crosses, circles with red centers, maple leaves. Didn't know what the symbols meant, but he could see these ships all fought together even though they looked different. Then the drop pods started falling. They came down like meteors, trailing fire through the atmosphere. Each one was shaped like a bullet and moved faster than anything should move in air. The Hive drones tried to shoot them down, but the pods were too small and too fast. They hit the ground all over the city. When they opened, soldiers poured out. Had never seen anything like them. They were small, barely half as tall as but they moved with perfect coordination. Their armor was thick and painted in different patterns. Their weapons made sounds like thunder. "Magnify Sector 7, he ordered. The screen zoomed in on a street near the market district. A group of Hive drones was advancing on a shelter full of civilians. Then the strange soldiers appeared from 3 different directions at once. They moved like dancers, but deadly ones. Each soldier seemed to know exactly where the others were without talking. Their weapons fired explosive shells that tore the drones apart. When one soldier ran out of ammunition, another was already covering him while he reloaded. But it was more than just their fighting. One of them broke away from the combat to help a wounded child to safety. Another used his own body to shield civilians from falling debris. They weren't just soldiers, they were protectors. "Sir, I'm getting communication signals from the new ships," the communications officer said. "They're trying to talk to us." "Put it through," ordered. A voice came through the speakers, speaking in a language the computer had never heard before. But somehow, the translation program was working. "This is Captain of the Terran Naval Ship Retribution. We received your distress call. We're here to help. All forces, please identify yourselves and your positions. We're bringing in support troops." Skin flickered through a dozen colors as emotions flooded through him. Relief, joy, amazement, and something else. Hope. "This is Commander of the Defense Corps," he said into his communicator. "Captain, who are you? Where did you come from?" "We're human, Commander. We're from Earth, and we're very sorry we're late." Humans, the warriors from the stories, they were real. On the screens, watched the battle change completely. The human ships in space were smaller than the bioships, but they fought like a pack of wolves against giant beasts. They worked together in ways that confused the Hive. When one ship was damaged, 2 others would protect it. When the Hive tried to surround them, they scattered and attacked from new directions. In the city, the human soldiers were pushing the drones back street by street. They used tactics had never imagined. Some groups would attack from the front, drawing the drones' attention. Then other groups would hit them from the sides or behind. They even used the city's own buildings, climbing walls and jumping from roof to roof like the drones were just another type of ground to fight on. "Sir," said, his voice full of wonder, "the bioships are pulling back." It was true. The massive hive vessels were retreating from the planet. 2 of them were already badly damaged, leaking atmosphere and biological fluids into space. The humans had hurt them badly in just minutes. "Captain," said into his communicator, "how many of you are there?" 21 ships, about 15,000 troops total. Why?" Looked at his tactical display. The humans were outnumbered 100 to 1, maybe more. "The Hive has millions of drones. How can you fight so many?" The human captain's voice came back and could hear her smiling. "Commander, you're about to learn something about humans. We don't fight fair, and we never, ever leave someone hanging when they call for help." As if to prove her point, explosions began blooming inside one of the bioships. Somehow, the humans had gotten inside it. Skin shimmered bright gold, the color of pure amazement. The warriors from the old stories hadn't just come to help. They had come to win. Sergeant Maria Martinez crouched behind a broken wall and watched the hive drones advance down the street. There were maybe 50 of them, each one the size of a truck and covered in sharp teeth and claws. Her squad of Mexican Marines was hidden in the ruins of what used to be an art gallery. "Contact 50 meters, she whispered into her radio, "moving in formation Alpha." The drones moved together like they shared one brain, which Maria knew they did. The Hive Collective was one giant mind split across millions of bodies. It made them strong, but also predictable. "Martinez, this is," came a voice in her earpiece. "Captain James led a squad of Canadian forces 2 blocks away. We're in position on your left flank. Ready when you are." "Copy that, you ready?" Lieutenant Sarah commanded a group of South Korean special forces hidden in the underground tunnels. "Ready, Sergeant. We have eyes on their rear." This was how humans fought. Not like one big mind, but like many small ones all working together. Each squad could think for itself, adapt to new situations, and help the others without waiting for orders from above. "Wait for my signal," Maria said. She pulled out a small device and set it on the ground. The motion detector would tell her exactly when the drones reached the right spot. The hive creatures moved forward, their green eyes glowing in the smoke. They had been winning this battle for hours before the humans arrived. Now they seemed confused. Their enemies kept appearing in places they didn't expect, using tactics that made no sense. Maria's device beeped softly. "Now." Her Marines opened fire from 3 different buildings at once. Their assault rifles spat explosive rounds that tore chunks out of the drones' armored shells. At the same time, Canadians hit the drones from the side with rocket launchers. The explosions echoed through the ruined street. But the best part came when Koreans erupted from manholes and drainage tunnels right in the middle of the drone formation. They had crawled through the city's underground systems to get behind the enemy. Their weapons fired at point-blank range, cutting through the drones like a chainsaw through wood. In 30 seconds, 50 hive drones became 50 piles of smoking wreckage. "Nice work, people," Maria said. "Move to the next position." This was happening all over the city. Humans fought in ways the hive had never seen. German engineers planted explosives in buildings, then collapsed them on top of enemy formations. Japanese soldiers used their swords alongside their guns, moving so fast the drones couldn't track them. British commandos rappelled down from rooftops, hitting the enemy from above. Each national force fought differently, but they all worked together like parts of the same machine. In space, Captain was using the same approach on a larger scale. Her ships scattered across the star system, forcing the bioships to split up their attention. When the hive tried to concentrate their forces, the human ships would regroup and hit them somewhere else. "Retribution, this is Moscow," came a voice over the communications channel. Colonel's heavy cruiser had just finished destroying a bioship's weapon systems. Target neutralized, moving to assist. Captain's Japanese ship was fighting two bioships at once, but winning because of speed and precision. The bioships were strong but slow to change direction. They danced between them, firing constantly and never staying in one place long enough to get hit. "All ships, the planet Crackers, are charging their main weapons," announced. "We need to take them out now." The planet Crackers were the worst part of the Hive fleet. Each one could break open a world's crust and plant Hive eggs in the molten core. If they fired, nothing could save the planet. "And Edinburgh with me," ordered. "We're going straight down their throats." It was a crazy plan. The three human ships dove directly at the largest planet Cracker, flying between its defensive weapons. Their shields flared as energy beams hit them, but they kept going. At the last second, they separated and flew along the bioship's hull, firing everything they had into its weapon ports. The planet Cracker died in a burst of biological fire, its own weapons turning inward and cooking it from the inside. On the ground, something even more impressive was happening. Chief Petty Officer Jackson led a team of American combat engineers into one of the bioships that had landed near the city. Bioships were alive, which meant they could be hurt in ways machines couldn't. "Remember, we're looking for the neural cortex," Jackson told his team as they cut through the ship's living hull. "It's like a brain, but the size of a room." The inside of the bioship was like being inside a giant animal. The walls pulsed with a heartbeat. Strange fluids dripped from the ceiling. Hive creatures moved through the corridors like antibodies trying to fight off an infection. Which, Jackson realized, was exactly what they were. His team fought their way deeper into the ship, following maps downloaded from other bioships humans had captured before. They used flamethrowers to clear the corridors and explosives to blast through barriers. When they found the neural cortex, it was even more disgusting than Jackson had imagined. It looked like a giant brain made of red jelly, pulsing with lights. Cables grew out of it like veins, connecting to every part of the ship. Jackson could hear voices whispering in languages that hurt to listen to. "Plant the charges," he ordered. "Set them for maximum yield." The fusion bombs were small but powerful. When they went off, they would turn the neural cortex into plasma. The bioship would die instantly, taking its crew of millions with it. As his team worked, Jackson thought about the they were trying to save. He had seen some of them during the fighting. They were tall and graceful, with skin that changed color like a mood ring. They seemed gentle, more like artists than warriors. The kind of people worth saving. "Charges set," his demolitions expert reported. 60 seconds to detonation. "Move out," Jackson ordered. They ran through the dying bioship as alarms howled around them. Hive creatures tried to stop them, but the humans fought their way out with grenades and gunfire. They reached their entry point just as the charges went off. The bioship convulsed like a dying whale. Its lights went out. Its weapons stopped firing. It crashed into the city's outer district, but it was already dead. All across the battlefield, humans were proving something the Hive couldn't understand. They weren't just one more species to be consumed. They were something new, something dangerous. They were pack hunters who had learned to use tools, and they had just decided the Hive was a threat to their pack. "All ships, this is," the captain's voice came over the radio. "Bioships are retreating. Repeat, the enemy is falling back." Maria Martinez looked up from her position and saw it was true. The massive alien ships were pulling away from the planet, their hulls broken. In the streets, the remaining drones were retreating as well, moving back toward their landing sites. For the first time in 3 years, the Hive Collective was running away. "Think they'll be back?" asked over the radio. Maria watched a group of human medics helping wounded to safety. One of the aliens, a child with silver skin, was holding hands with a human soldier twice its size. "Maybe," she said, But if they do come back, they'll find us waiting for them. The humans had come to 442C to answer a call for help, but they had done something more than that. They had shown the galaxy that the hive could be beaten. And they had made some new friends along the way. 3 days after the battle, walked through his city and marveled at what he saw. The hive drones were gone, their bodies hauled away by human engineering teams. The bioships had fled to deep space, limping away from the system like wounded animals. But most amazing of all were the humans themselves. They were everywhere. Human doctors worked alongside healers in the medical centers. Human engineers helped repair the damaged crystal spires using techniques no one had imagined before. Human soldiers stood guard at the shelters, but they weren't acting like conquerors. They were acting like friends. Paused outside a small park where a group of human children were playing with young. The humans had brought their families on some of the ships, the medical vessels, and engineering ships that had arrived after the battle. The children were showing each other games from their different worlds. A human girl with dark hair was teaching a young how to play something called hopscotch. The child's skin glowed bright yellow with joy as she tried to copy the human's jumping pattern. When she succeeded, both children cheered and hugged each other. "Beautiful, isn't it?" a voice said behind him. Turned and saw Captain approaching. The human leader looked tired but satisfied. Her dark eyes held kindness, but also the hardness that came from seeing too much war. Captain said, his skin shifting to the pale blue of respect. "I wanted to thank you again. Without your help." "You don't need to thank us," Commander said. "That's what people do. When someone calls for help, you answer. But you came so far. Your worlds must be dozens of light years away. Why risk your lives for strangers?" Was quiet for a moment, watching the children play. "My species has a saying, no one fights alone. We learned it the hard way back when we were young and stupid. We had wars between our own people for thousands of years. We almost destroyed ourselves." "What changed?" asked. "We grew up," said simply. "We realized that the universe is big and dark and full of things that want to hurt us. But it's also full of people like you, good people who just want to live in peace and raise their children. When we found out we weren't alone in space, we decided to be better than we had been." She gestured toward the mixed group of children. "That's why we fight. Not for territory or resources, but to make sure kids like that get to grow up safe." Skin shimmered with deep emotion. "The hive will be back. They never give up on a system once they've tasted it." "Maybe," agreed, "but when they come back, they won't find you alone." She pointed toward the sky, where new ships were arriving. Not just human ships, but vessels from a dozen other species. Word had spread across the galaxy about what had happened at 442C. The hive had been defeated, driven away by this strange warrior race called humans. Other species were coming to see for themselves. Some brought trade goods, others brought medical supplies. A few brought soldiers, wanting to learn human fighting techniques. "We're organizing something," explained. "A coalition of species who are tired of being afraid. Humans will provide the military training and coordination. Others will contribute what they're good at: technology, resources, knowledge. An alliance against the hive." "An alliance for everyone," corrected. "The hive is just the first problem we're going to solve together." Over the next few days, watched the coalition take shape. Representatives from the Trade Federation arrived with ships full of medical equipment. The crystal-based silicates shared their knowledge of defensive technologies. The aquatic deepers brought new underwater farming techniques that could feed billions. But it was the humans who held it all together. They translated between species that couldn't communicate directly. They mediated disputes over resources. They trained soldiers from a dozen different worlds to fight as one unit. Most importantly, they kept their promise. When they said they would protect someone, they meant it. A permanent human garrison stayed on 442C, not to occupy, but to defend. Captain's Canadian unit established a training base where soldiers learned human tactics. The Japanese contingent started a technical school that taught both species about each other's technologies. Sergeant Martinez's Mexican Marines set up a communications hub that could reach every world in the coalition within hours. If anyone called for help, the entire alliance would know about it almost instantly. The most impressive thing was how quickly the different species learned to work together. Human flexibility combined with patience. Business sense mixed with silicate engineering precision. The aquatic deeper's three-dimensional thinking helped solve problems no one had considered before. Within a month, the coalition had its first test. The hive attacked a mining colony in the beta system. But this time, they weren't facing a lone world with outdated defenses. They faced a joint fleet of 12 different species, coordinated by human tactical doctrine and equipped with the best technology the galaxy had to offer. The bioships fled after losing half their number in the first hour of combat. "They're learning to be afraid," told during one of his visits to the human command ship. "The hive always counted on their enemies being isolated and weak. Now we're neither." "What happens next?" asked. Smiled, and for the first time since he'd met her, she looked truly hopeful. "Next, we take the fight to them. We find their home systems and end this war once and for all." Felt his skin shift to bright gold, the color of excitement and anticipation. "You really think we can win?" "Commander, 3 months ago, your world was about to die and no one was coming to help. Today, you're part of the largest military alliance in galactic history. What do you think?" That evening stood once again on his command tower and looked up at the stars. But this time, he wasn't alone. Captain stood beside him, along with representatives from 6 other species. Above them, ships from a dozen worlds patrolled the system, their running lights forming new constellations in the night sky. "The children are asking questions," said. "They want to know who the humans are, where you came from." "What do you tell them?" asked. "I tell them the old stories were true," said. His skin glowed soft silver with contentment. "I tell them that somewhere in the galaxy, there are people who hear when others call for help, people who will travel across the darkness to stand with strangers, people who never let their friends fight alone." In the park below, human and children were still playing together, their laughter echoing through the crystal streets. They were too young to understand the war, but old enough to know that different didn't mean dangerous. They were the future the coalition was fighting for. "Captain," said quietly, "before you came, we thought we were going to die alone in the dark. Now we know something different." "What's that?" Skin brightened to pure white, the color of absolute truth. "We know that nobody has to fight alone anymore, and that makes all the difference in the galaxy." Above them, a new ship dropped out of hyperspace. Another species joining the coalition. Another world choosing to stand with others rather than face the darkness alone. The Hive Collective had made one critical mistake. They had assumed that fear would always defeat hope. They had never encountered a species like humanity, one that had learned to turn their protective instincts outward, to include anyone who needed help. Now the galaxy was learning to fight like humans, together, as one. And in the deepest regions of space, the Hive felt something they had never experienced before. They felt afraid.